Today I'm going to show you how to make this creamy, comforting chicken stew. So stick around. Welcome back to No Recipes. I'm Mark Matsumoto, and I'm here to show you how to elevate your everyday meals. So remember to smack that subscribe button and ring that bell so you don't miss out. Japanese supermarkets have a whole section of boxes of instant roux for making stews. But if you've ever checked out the roux aisle, you've probably also seen a blue and white box tucked between the curry and hayashi rice blocks. Although it's known as a Western food here in Japan, Korean stew is a Japanese creation made with chicken and vegetables cooked in a rich and creamy roux. Its mellow flavor is ridiculously comforting, which is probably why it's become a favorite here during the cooler months of the year. Let's start by checking out the ingredients. For our vegetables, I'm using a tablespoon of oil, 1 medium onion, 2 carrots, 2 potatoes, and 1 bunch of oyster mushrooms. For our protein, I've got 600 grams of skin-on chicken thighs, but you can use skinless if you like. For the stew, I've got 3 cups of vegetable stock, 2 teaspoons of salt, an 1/8 teaspoon of white pepper, 1 small bay leaf, 1 tablespoon of dried milk powder, 3/4 of a cup of cream. I'm using one with a butterfat content of 47%. 5 tablespoons of flour, and a 1/2 cup of creamed corn. I'm also going to be adding a 1/2 head of broccoli for color. Let's prep the veggies. I'm going to trim the ends off a peeled onion, and then slice it in half before cutting it into 1/2-inch thick slices. For the potatoes, I'm going to peel them before cutting them into 1.5-inch pieces at an angle like this. This traditional method of cutting tapered vegetables is called rangiri in Japanese, and it ensures you end up with pieces that are all roughly the same size and thickness. Ideally, you want to use a waxy type of potato like Yukon Golds or Red Bliss because they're not going to fall apart as easily as they cook. For the carrots, I'm going to trim the ends off and slice these rangiri as well. You can see as I progress from the thin end to the thick end, all of my pieces are about the same size and thickness, so they cook through in about the same amount of time. This is important because you don't want to end up with some crunchy carrots while others end up turning to mush. For the mushrooms, I'm using some oyster mushrooms today, but any flavorful mushroom like cremini, button, or shiitake will work as well. For these ones, I'm gonna just pull the clusters apart, but depending on what you're using, you may need to trim and slice them. For the broccoli, a full head is gonna be a little too much, so I'm gonna cut off about 1/2 a head's worth of florets. Then I'm gonna cut these up into either halves or quarters so they'll fit in your mouth in one bite. Other hearty green veggies like green beans, fava beans, or green peas will also work great in this stew. Finally, for the chicken thighs, I'm gonna cut them up into chunks that are about 2 inches in size. These are gonna shrink as they cook, so you wanna cut them a little larger than you cut the veggies. I know someone's gonna ask, so you can use breast meat if you like, but because of the long cooking time, it's gonna end up dry and pasty. Breast meat is better for dishes that are cooked quickly at a high temperature, while thigh meat works best for braises and stews like this because the fat and connective tissue break down as it cooks, keeping the meat tender and juicy. Okay, our prep's done, and I have a large Dutch oven over medium-high heat, and I'm gonna add a splash of oil and the onions, potatoes, and carrots. Then we're gonna saute these for about 5 minutes. The idea is to bring out the sweetness of the vegetables without browning them, so be sure to continue stirring them. I know I'm usually all about the Maillard reaction, but we're gonna get plenty of umami from the stock and dairy, and the goal with this cream stew is to keep it as white as possible. After about 5 minutes, your onions should start to turn translucent, and that's when you want to add in the vegetable stock, salt, white pepper, and bay leaf. I'm also going to add in the chicken here. Let's give that a quick stir, and then we're going to raise the heat to high to bring the mixture to a boil. Browning the chicken first will give you more flavor, but there are 2 reasons why I don't brown it for this stew. The first is color, and the second is that browning the chicken causes the meat fibers to seize up, which can make the exterior of the chicken a bit tough. By adding it straight into the water like this, the chicken ends up super tender and juicy. Okay, it's coming to a boil now, and you can see some foam and oil floating to the surface. So I'm gonna use a skimmer to skim all of this off. The foam is loose protein and particulate matter from the meat, and it's gonna make the sauce gritty and add off flavors. That's why you always wanna remove it from dishes like this. I don't always skim off the oil, but in this case, we're gonna be adding a ton of cream at the end. So I wanna remove as much extra fat from this as possible. Once you don't see any more foam floating to the surface, turn down the heat to low and partially cover the pot with the lid. Now you wanna let this simmer for about 15 minutes. While we wait for the chicken and veggies to cook, let's parboil the broccoli. I've got some boiling water here that I'm gonna add a generous pinch of salt to, and then we're gonna add in the broccoli. Then you wanna wait for this to come back to a boil and let it cook for about a minute. When it's done, just drain it and set it aside. We also need to make our roux, and I've got a crazy simple hack for you that involves a bowl of cream, some flour, and milk powder. Then I'm just gonna stir this all together until it forms a smooth paste. Roux is a mixture of fat and flour that's usually cooked, but after a lot of experimenting, I've found that cooking it makes no difference in this recipe, and aside from being simpler to prepare, the roux stays snow white, and I've also found that it's a lot harder to break when you add it to the stew. Once you have a smooth paste like this, you're good to go. Okay, let's check on our stew. You can see there's some more scum and fat that's floated to the surface, so let's go ahead and skim that all off. You can do this with a spoon, but I really like these mesh skimmers because they let any water pass through them, but the holes in the mesh are so small, the oil and scum won't go through. I have one of these on my Amazon store along with my other recommended kitchen tools, so look for the link to my store in the description down below. Now I'm gonna add in the mushrooms and get them submerged. These are only gonna take about a minute to cook through, which is why I like adding them at the end, so they don't end up shriveled up and hard. Okay, this is looking good, so let's temper our roux. I'm gonna do this by adding a few ladlefuls of liquid from the stew into the bowl with the roux. Then I'm gonna use a whisk to mix this together until there are no lumps. The tempering process brings the roux closer to the temperature of the stew, so the proteins don't seize up and break when we add it in. It also makes it easier to dissolve, so you don't end up with any lumps in your stew. Now I'm going to dump the tempered roux into our stew, and let's mix that in. Then I'm gonna add in the creamed corn. This is optional, but I like the umami and mild sweetness it adds, and it's my secret ingredient that makes this taste just as good, if not better than the instant roux blocks. Now we just need to let this thicken up, but be careful not to boil the stew at this point, or it may cause the sauce to break. Once it's nice and thick like this, I'm gonna finish it off by adding in the broccoli. Since we've parboiled it already, you just need to warm it up, and our Japanese cream stew is ready to serve. Okay, let's go ahead and plate this up. Thanks to a few simple hacks, this easy cream stew comes together in about 30 minutes, so it makes for a great weeknight meal. It's enough to feed 5 to 6 people, but it also makes for good leftovers, which is why I like making such a big batch. Personally, I like serving cream stew with a crusty loaf of bread, but it's also delicious with rice. I've used the standard vegetables for this version, but like any stew, there's a lot of room to improvise, so feel free to make this with whatever combination of protein and vegetables you have on hand. Cream stew makes for great leftovers, and if you happen to have puff pastry laying around, it's also a delicious pot pie filling, so I hope you'll give it a try. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Give this a big thumbs up and share it with all your friends that love a good hearty stew. This video was made possible by viewers like you. So if you're learning something new from my recipes, I hope you'll consider clicking the link up here to join the crew and help support my future videos. Well, I'm gonna have a big bowl of this cream stew with a big hunk of crusty bread, but I'll catch you in the next one.